welcome to RedEye Multimedia. I'm Sam Payne-Young, and today we're going to be reviewing this book, Vengeance, Feminism, The Power of Black Women's Fury in Lawless Times by Callie Nicole Gross. Before we jump into the review, we're going to talk about the author really quickly. So, Callie Nicole Gross is a leading scholar on Black women, history, and violence. And according to her website, her primary research explores Black women's historical experiences in the U.S. criminal justice system. Gross is a college professor at Emory University, and she teaches African American studies. So far, Gross has published 3 books. Her first one was Colored Amazons in 2006, and then Hannah Mary Tabbs and the Disembodied Torso in 2016. And then she published A Black Women's History of the United States in 2020, and then, of course, Vengeance, Feminism, which was published in September of 2024. So when I initially read this book, I definitely wasn't expecting to be as engaged as I was. I was obviously looking forward to learning about Black feminist history, and I thought this would be like a more detailed version of everything I'd already learned about in class. And let's just say I was very, very wrong about that. So this book is focused mostly on the late 19th century in Philadelphia, and Gross takes the broad topic of vengeance feminism and breaks it up into 5 sections, or 5 chapters. The first one is their honor, and then their history, their weapons, and their games, and then their dead is the last chapter. Each chapter starts with a Black woman's story that relates to the chapter, but it's not just like, a bland description of what happened. It's like a detailed retelling of everything about that person. Like their backstory, their motivation, and like what emotions they were feeling at the time of like the crime or the event. In every chapter there are like 1 or 2 of those stories. I think one of them has 3. And she uses the stories to introduce each of her points before she goes about explaining them. And I found that structure really engaging because you get to see like these little nuggets of narrative, which makes it so much easier to digest the rest of the content because you get something that's like bringing you through the story. And I always like really appreciate it when historians try to humanize the people that they're talking about and make them seem like they're real people, because obviously they are, and not just like symbols. And she does a really good job of that. And as someone who like loves history, loves reading about history, I'm definitely used to there being those long chunks of text that are really abstract and honestly a little bit boring. And I know that that's not everyone's cup of tea. So I'm not going to say that this book is like an easy read, because there's definitely a lot of heavy content in here, and there are some times where there's like long chunks of text that are hard to get through. But if you're looking for a book that's going to keep you like really engaged and really like guide you through things with like a narrative, I would totally recommend this, like 110%. Another thing that I really appreciated about this book was that it showed me a perspective that I hadn't really been exposed to in any of my education. This book isn't just about Black feminism or historical Black feminism, but it's about vengeance feminism. The women in this book weren't perfect people. They made morally gray decisions, and they committed crimes. A lot of them were like sex workers or just scared teenagers, and this book shows how these women resisted oppression by whatever means necessary. These women were struggling to live in a time where they weren't really protected by the laws, but they were still, of course, expected to adhere to them. And Gross does like a really good job of describing these women in a way that they weren't really understood in the time that they were alive. Gross, instead of excusing their actions, explains the systems that were in place that forced them into those actions, and then compares them to the modern systems that are really similar. And I think it's a really great way to have commentary on a current issue through the lens of the past. And I think we should end this off with a quote from the book that I think really sums up what Gross was talking about. Vengeance feminism isn't clean, it wasn't neat, and it was usually illegal, and yet it was a potent means for otherwise marginalized women to escape total victimization. There was a terrible and fantastic power to it.